Hi, my name is Anna.
My name is Ariana.
And for our honors project this semester, we decided to examine the role of women in Buddhism and how it has evolved.
We interviewed various women involved in Buddhism to get different perspectives on our topic.
We spoke with Annie Palmer-Rabicki, an ordained Buddhist nun who is currently leading a small practice in Cleveland.
We also interviewed Carol Newsham, a longtime practitioner who is the leader at the Lesbian Buddhist Sangha in Berkeley.
Lastly, we interviewed Lisa Haney, a teacher here at Athenian who has independently practiced Buddhism throughout her life growing up here and throughout her travels.
We compiled footage of our conversations with these women to create our film.
There are some very powerful female figures, and there's a whole kind of embodiment of the feminine divine called Dakini energy is like the feminine wisdom energy, and can manifest in a lot of different ways. And sometimes like a Dakini will act as a shocking figure to practitioners to kind of wake up to the truth, you know. There's one of the famous stories involves a master called Naropa back in India, and he was a great scholar, and but he kind of wasn't getting anywhere. And a Dakini appeared to him and was like, "Dude, you don't understand anything. You just understand the words. You have to stop this. You have to go and find a teacher and actually practice, you know." So, or like a Dakini might appear, like some other person was trying to cross a river and there was a very old lady there asking for help, and he didn't recognize that was Dakini and just kind of walked over her, and she said, "Same, you're not practicing properly if you're not helping people, you know, this kind of thing."
I was raised Christian. It never really worked for me as the short story. It didn't have any kind of real philosophy to me, or didn't offer me an understanding of any kind of universal truth, or didn't answer any of my existential questions. I was a feminist. I was looking around. I just saw a flyer in a bookstore in Boston that talked about a place called the Insight Meditation Society. And on it said, clarity of mind and the ability to see the truth of the way things really are. I thought, that's just what I'm looking for. This particular group here in Berkeley, what we call the Lesbian Buddhist Sangha, started in 1995. So it was a nice little group, but it wasn't really reaching very many people, and it wasn't very organized. There's about, there could be up to 100 to 150 women, you know, that are really on committees, you know, or make things happen. You know, it's an evolving phenomenon, and I love that. I like that because it suits what's needed at the time.
My parents were really progressive and young for their age, and were exploring lots of different things. One of the things they explored was transcendental meditation. It was the first time that I was introduced to meditation. And then one day my dad brought home this big Buddha statue. I was really intrigued by it. It was really different. I guess it was exotic to me, but there was something about the posture of the Buddha and the expression on the face that really intrigued me. There's this calm. I was like, what is all that about? You know, I was curious. I went to Japan and I studied about Japanese culture and history, and Buddhism is a huge part, Zen Buddhism, of Japanese culture. And Tokyo is this crazy city, and I was going through a lot of culture shock and adjusting, and so Buddhism and meditation really drew me. Well, I think the remain equanimous piece.
Yeah.
Is
just learned about that one.
Yeah. You know, that equanimity.
Yeah.
I think for women to go through life with that is certainly helpful. Because we can be drama queens sometimes. Yeah. Right? There's that we are emotional beings. And so there's as a woman, this is helping me because I'm an emotional being and I'm all over the place all the time with my feelings.
I know for women, at least the teachings that I've done, sense-based awareness and particularly body-based awareness comes more naturally, comes easily. Well, I would say body-based practices, movement. Vipassana doesn't do a whole lot. Theravada doesn't do so much with ritual. But I think that that's a lack. And I've been trying to foster it within the women's sangha that I work with. and there's some resistance to it. And I think it's just because of the traditional religions that they were in and the rituals that either didn't work for them or they found oppressive or meaningless. So they're ritual. But I find that it's really, really helpful to have ritual more. And I know there are some women that love it and they're very good at it. You know, dressing a certain way, manipulating beautiful objects, you know, with meaning. But again, I think it's been conditioned out of us a bit, sort of, or taken out of our hands and put in another place, maybe. So now it's not their favorite thing. Also, singing and music, movement, as I said, dance, all these things. I think that women would take too well, and they do in certain countries in Asia still. You know, there's a lot of artwork and dance, like in Hinduism and places like that. But within modern Buddhism up here, you don't find so much of that. Actually, in a specific cultural, you know, context, maybe in some specific temple. It's empowering as far as being a woman, in that it helps me understand the world a little bit better, and it helps me have the presence of mind to come forward in a more constructive way. As a woman, perhaps it breaks some of my old conditioning about how we are as women and how we're supposed to be in the world, as queer people, how we're supposed to be. So it's certainly empowering in that way. Definitely, if you think of it as becoming a more clear, more helpful human being.
Well, I think as a woman traveling, as a woman living in the world, there are particular stresses and challenges. And I found that Buddhism helped me just in general as a human being, but certainly, you know, it's a really interesting question. It's hard to find sort of the feminine in Buddhism. It's really, you know, started by a man. Most of the practitioners historically were men. I was always really drawn and intrigued by the women Buddhist nuns that I met in Japan or that I saw in Japan. Something about shaving your head. There's a liberation in that, right? We think about how much attention as women we bring to our hair and our appearance. And so that idea that you would just shave your head and wear these black robes, and that was your life, was practicing, and you know, this practicing Buddhism. It just presented me with, I think, another way that was inspiring. I remember talking with friends about women in Buddhism, and in fact, women who I knew who'd become ordained as Buddhist nuns, and it was a little bit harder for them, you know, but they were always inspiring to me. And then there's a teacher, Joanna Macy, who's an American psychologist, I want to say. She's really into sustainability, but she's also really looked at Buddhism. So she was an important role model for me, an intellectual inspiration, and she was a woman and a Buddhist. But I think, you know, I am who I am today, and I do feel myself as a strong woman and confident in the world, and a lot of it has to do with my Buddhist practice. So just it grounds you in a really important way.
And again, I think it was Dharma for me when I started. In other words, the learning of the teachings a lot. And then, of course, it was Sangha. You know, it was building community, because that's kind of who I am as a person. And now I think it's more Buddha, not Buddha himself necessarily, certainly, but the understanding of the enlightened mind. You know, as I get older, I think, no, this is about enlightenment. I mean, it's about being peaceful and being mindful and being nice and everything, but there is a path, you know, to liberation, you know, and you've been studying for a long while. So especially as people get older, I think there should be the opportunity to really deepen and see how close they can come to this, you know, this awareness that's talked about.
Yes, engaged Buddhism is what I'm interested in. So at the same time, you're watching your experience and you're seeing it just as that, and you're trying not to get too attached to things and remain equanimous. What my first teacher, Goenkaji, taught me is equanimity and how important that is. But at the same time, you are actively engaged with positive change in the world. So it's actually a wonderful combination, I think, because activists or people in the world can get really burnt out because they get too attached to outcome. It's like, how do you act and not get too attached to outcome? anything in this world has had a sort of a patriarchal focus in the last era of time, or great amount of time. So yeah, I think women leadership within Buddhism would be fantastic, more of it, and certainly women writing also about their experiences. There was one poet, I mentioned Basho, the Japanese writer. There was a woman poet, I think her name is Onona Miyachi. I discovered her also when I was in Japan. And she also was poet, influenced by the Japanese Zen Buddhist tradition. And I really liked Basho, and I really loved her because she was a woman and she was grappling with things that women deal with. More women would be great. More leadership, more active out there leadership and writing.